Welcome to the Humanity Leadership Podcast. My name is David Wheatley. We're here to talk leadership in small, bite-sized and practical chunks. Enjoy. So this is an interview with Dr. Bernie Mullin. And Bernie Mullin's just written a book called Reimagining America's Dream, Making It Attainable for All. And Bernie's got a fascinating background, which was what attracted me to having this conversation. His background is in sports and entertainment industry. He's a former sports and entertainment industry executive who turned around franchises, set all-time revenue and attendance records, and generated 1.5 billion, more than 1.5 billion in revenues for brands from the NFL to the US Open Tennis with his agency Aspire Marketing Group. He was the CEO of NBA and NHL teams and the CMO of the NBA. He's also a speaker, podcaster, author, humanitarian. His latest project is the Aspire Difference Foundation, which focuses on supporting single parents with preschool children, and all the net proceeds from his work, podcasts and book go to the Aspire Difference Foundation. And his new book, I said, Reimagining America's Dream, Making It Attainable for All, is what we're talking about. It's coming from a what's going on this fall perspective, from a leadership perspective. Here's an executive who has taken the third part of his life, if you like, and looking to see what he can do to help and support America. Now, the interesting thing is he's formerly a Liverpudlian, or originally a Liverpudlian, so from not that far down the road from where I grew up. Although he mentions a few times that he's the blue side of Liverpool, which is Everton, the soccer team, and we've had some tough games between Everton and my team Leeds in history, so that may come out a little bit. So I encourage you to listen to the conversation with an open mind as to some of the things he's talking about, and just challenge people to think about what's their leadership role in all of this work. Enjoy. Well, Bernie, thanks for joining us today to talk about your book, Reimagining America's Dream, Making It Attainable for All. So I wonder if you'd give us a quick overview of what brought you to write this, and really what's the itch you're trying to scratch.
Thank you, David, for having me on. Book number one is 51 Years in America. Thank you, America, for adopting me, letting me in, and allowing me to personally live the American dream and pass it on to my kids and to my grandkids. So it's out of gratitude. The book, the first part of the book is the different states I lived in with the different jobs. And, I've lived in 3 time zones. I've worked in all 4 time zones. So, I hate politics, which is kind of ironic that I wrote a book that's very political. But as I moved around the country and worked in different states and different regions, and as I followed the American dream, in my career, first of all, in academia for 10 years at the University of Massachusetts, and then the last 40 years in the sports and entertainment business, I became more politically aware. And I started to realize how aspirational the American dream was for me personally. And I think that that is really important, that we need to have that. And certainly in the last 2 decades, as the division and the nasty toxicity has started to come in America between extreme right and extreme left, I felt that this was a potential uniting force, bringing people back together. We saw that the ties that bind the culture of America started to break apart and get loose, and that this was an opportunity to come back together. And using Pew Research, what are the top 10 social issues in America? And then the second part of the book is projected recommendations to try and bring us back together to solve the social issues and make the American dream attainable for all, because people in poverty And we got 37 million Americans living in poverty right now. The people in poverty and with poorer educational experience, the dream probably isn't there for them. And I believe we have to make it available for them.
So where did it go? Did it go just because of the extreme divides in politics?
No, I think there's a lot of different places we can point to be honest with you, David. I think that lack of hope. So one of the key pieces of glue that I address in the book is this EPH. The idea of people losing hope, and where do they lose hope from? It's from years and years of poverty, the culture of poverty, and the fact that you know, I think it starts with a false premise. And I have to be very careful when I start with a false premise because, I used to, in my graduate school classes at the University of Massachusetts, put up the word. I used to teach the business policy, sport business policy class, and it was about ownership in pro sports and the whole equity issues in college athletics long before we had name, image, and likeness and student athletes not being fairly compensated. All of those arguments. But what's that? And we had a graduate school class that would have 250 applicants for 25 positions. We get Harvard, Amherst College, Williams College, great academic minds, people that were athletes, people that wanted to be coaches, wanted to be in pro sports. What's the difference between equity and equality? And what's the point I'm rambling about here? The point is we're not all equal. And so we've come with the evolution, and I understand why, part with DEI, part with political correctness, part with the evolution of world the world's gone, in that we've all got to be equal. Whereas, if you believe in God or whatever divinity you believe in, the creator of the universe didn't create us all equal. I am not LeBron James. Okay, I wish I was. I wish I'd been Pele, Maradona. Well, I didn't like Maradona because an Englishman, of course. But Ronaldo and Messi. I wish I had their ability, but I didn't. And LeBron James is incredibly smart. I met him, in my roles with the NBA. But so he's a smart business guy, don't get me wrong. But I think I'm a better sport marketer, so this divinity, this higher power, this, divine force of the universe gave me what they gave me. I'm a man, I'm white. I am relatively smart. I am incredibly hardworking because I had a father that taught me elbow grease. I washed his car at age 8 years old. And when I finished washing the car, I'd say, "Sir," he was a sergeant major and a boxer in the army. "Sir, I finished your car." And he took me out to the car and looked under the bumper, grabbed my head and rubbed my nose in the dirt because I'd failed to wash under the bumper. Well, David, do you think that was the last time I ever forgot to wash under the bumper? Of course, right? And today he would have been arrested for child abuse. But in those days, that was, and this was in the 50s, this was tough love. And he taught me elbow grease. And I stole apples from my aunt's orchard, not knowing they were baking apples, puked them up all over the kitchen floor, and, got in trouble for lying, for blaming one of my neighbors who was older than me, all the other stuff. So honesty and integrity were instilled in me at a very young age. And I think these are the things that we're forgetting is it's not about making everybody equal, which, if you listen to certainly the Democratic convention going on right now, and I'm an independent, moderate, not for either party, but it's all about equality and giving people things to be equal. And that's not what this book is about. This book is about we're given different talents, use them. Use them. What we talked about in the preamble to this podcast, your hockey coach. Did you work hard? Did you give it everything you can? And the rewards of the American dream will come. And
So that,
that's I think, an unusual message, David.
and I think as you acknowledge, it's easy for us two white guys with what would be classed as positive accents in this country, although yours is fading. It comes out every so often when you talk about Liverpool. But we have a natural advantage that one of the things that surprised me when I moved to Kalamazoo is understanding redlining and
Yeah,
the fact that some people have been weighted down by some things versus people like you and I who may be weighted up by some things.
correct.
And
Correct.
so I think the equity side of it is, does everybody start from a fair place? Not that
Right.
not everybody's going to be LeBron James, but does everybody start from a fair starting line?
Very much so. And that's what the book is about. And, the book recognizes there's a couple of things. I recognize that I went from council house, income subsidized housing. I mean, there were solid brick houses. We had food on the table. But when I was hungry, because I was an athlete and wanted to, and exercise and played soccer every opportunity I could, it was bread and butter. And it was white bread and butter. It wasn't particularly appetizing, but that's what you got. And, David, you know this, and the people in America don't know that people from Liverpool are nicknamed Scousers. And Scouse is Irish Jew. And we as kids had blind Scouse. Blind Scouse was no meat, it was potatoes and vegetables. We were poor, but we didn't know it because we had two parents and they disciplined us and they gave us great guidance. Now, my dad goes and starts selling life insurance, and he's really good at it. And in 3 years, we've got a car finally. And all of a sudden, we moved to middle class, really nice middle class houses at age 11. And when I go to the high school in Crosby, a very nice suburban area of the city of Liverpool, certainly not where I grew up in Litherland. And you start to learn, and I never lost my connection to people. So you always go back to it and say, what is the dividing line? Well, dad died, but he left insurance money, and I had enough money that in my junior year at university, I bought a house. And I bought the house for £4,000 and sold it 3 years later, 4 years later, for £10,000, which provided the money for me to, when I moved to Kansas, to eventually design a house and live in a house. There was my, frustrated, wanted to be an architect coming out. And have what I have now, which is to be blessed with two houses, multi-million-dollar houses. Now, I can sit there and say I earned it, just like you said, but I know the privilege I had of being a white, well-educated male with an English accent, at least back in those days, you know, to put me together. So the book is about those that don't have that. And really, it goes into education, and it starts with free preschool for every kid in America, an expensive investment, $100 billion a year, is what it would cost the federal government. But that's what we're giving to Gaza, to Ukraine, to Israel right now. And I'm not suggesting we take that away. I'm suggesting if we can do an unbudgeted 100 billion for democracy worldwide, surely to God we can do 100 billion to kids, because the research shows that if you're not reading at third grade level by third grade, you're 5 times more likely to get involved with antisocial behaviors such as crime and be in jail, teenage pregnancy, alcohol and drug substance abuse, and all kinds of other social problems. So it's an investment, similar amount that we've been willing to make on our world defense and being in our role as world cop. But this time investing in youth, every kid, not just poor kids. It's not an entitlement, it's every kid. And then obviously a parent that's paying for preschool right now that is wealthy enough, then can then use that money elsewhere.
Mm. And so you're getting into the second part of your book, as you mentioned. The first part is a wonderful journey for me back into some of my roots as well, and seeing you transfer from the UK as an aspiring soccer player to being in the US as a business person. And the second part, you take on this recommendations for fixing the American dream on such small and easy to fix topics such as the economy, education, healthcare, diversity, addressing crime. polarization through the media and a global engagement.
Yeah, no. I mean, I was on a podcast recently, and a guy said, "What is it about you that likes challenges?" Going to the Pirates, in 1986, the worst team in baseball, 7,000 fans coming, 7 players in the federal grand jury drug trials. David Parker, they leaked out the grand jury trial testimony. He's putting $1,000 worth of cocaine up his nose every day, and I'm trying to get people to come and watch that team. They're like, "Are you kidding me?" I could remember the conversation with Giant Eagle Grocery Markets, Joe Facenda, beautiful guy, senior VP of Giant Eagle, and I'm saying, I want you to spend, a couple of $1 million to be our sponsor. He goes, "You want me to spend my money and to put my brand next to that?" And he did eventually, but it took a little while.
Even that is a non-complex issue compared to some of the ones you raise in the book, which
Yeah.
are hugely complex and, as you kind of addressed, don't have simple solutions.
They don't. No, they don't. I mean, so, let's look at what we're suggesting in the economy. Number one, we have 37 million people living below the poverty line in America. It shocks people when they realize the majority of that is rural white poor. It's not Black or Latino, although obviously a large portion of it is. But percentage wise, the percentage of the Black community, percentage of the Latino community living below the poverty line is massive. And that's where it gets the attention, and rightly so. So what are we suggesting? We're suggesting that we go to at least a $15 an hour minimum wage, David, that allows people the dignity of one full-time job, pays the bills. So you get that teenage pregnant, um, schoolgirl with a child on the way that doesn't have to do 2 jobs and try and get the GED. They can do one job. And that makes the difference. And then bigger cities like Detroit, like New York, Chicago, Denver, where I am. I mean, Denver City County has $37,000 minimum wage, 18.50 an hour. And I have the former company I had till I sold it a year ago. We have 10 employees that make that. And it you can make it work. So I understand any business person, and I understand the horror stories of McDonald's in California, with the minimum wage. You can make it work. It's not easy, but you can make it work. And I think we have to make it work for the dignity. Now, so that starts there. Then the next part is the free preschool, which is $10,000-15,000 per child on top of that. So if you're paying someone minimum 30 and you're taking $10,000-15,000 expense off their pocket, they've got $40,000 to $45,000 a year. People can live, and what we wanted to do, and where we set up the foundation, the Aspire Difference Foundation, was single parents with preschool kids that we would fund and support on 4 major legs. One, the mental health of the caregiver, particularly post-COVID. We've got massive mental health problems. So in our own small way, our goal is to grow to, at least in the next few years, serving 100 families, 50 in Colorado, where I live now, and 50 in Atlanta, Georgia, where I used to live. Single parent families with preschool kids, the goal being get them to kindergarten, able to read and write basic sentences, know the alphabet, and be able to do basic math. 1 + 2 = 3. And then the probability that they get to 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade and be reading and succeeding is massive. So, we think it starts there. Mental health of the caregiver, a safe and secure place for them to live, not in the hood. A child can go out in the street where they live and not be immediately recruited into gangs as a 7 or 8-year-old kid to be the drug runner, because they think they can get them around the police. Or 13, 14, 15, become a gangbanger and have to kill someone to get initiated into the gang, and my vestiges, David, I'm embarrassed to tell you that I threw a 5-gallon can of paint over a fence at a double-decker bus as an initiation to get in a gang when I was 14 or 15. And only because of all my mother's prayers did the can of paint hit the metal between the glass windows on the upper deck of the bus and the glass windows on the lower deck of the bus. It could have killed someone, could have maimed someone, blinded them, who knows what, but what are kids thinking of at that age? Who the hell knows? I obviously wasn't thinking right. It was more important to me to be buddies with this bunch of tough kids,
Mhm.
even though I lived in a really nice middle class house at that time, that was it. So education we think is really key. And there's other things in the book that go on from there, like latchkey babysitting. 1 in 5 American kids right now goes home to an empty house after school. And that's a petri dish for all kinds of social problems to occur. And
Is
somehow we got
driven
to
by the
stop it.
fact that people are out doing two jobs because they can't afford to live on one, and they can't afford the
Exactly.
childcare.
Exactly. And I think that that's one of the things that, I feel good about and we're getting good feedback on is that when you take the top 10 social issues, they're not 10 isolated, distinct, and non-interactive solutions. They are
Mhm.
interactive, holistic solutions that exactly starts with how do we get that single parent? I mean, mid 60% of African American kids in America are born to a single parent family. And after 1 year, the father disappears. So it's 71% after 1 year. That child is 1 year old. Black little boy or girl is in a single parent family, one income and all the stress and pressure. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to have that change whereby that mom, first of all, part of the program is education on healthy food. It's not fast food on Monday as a hamburger, fast food as pizza on Tuesday, and out of a can from a food desert on Wednesday. It is, find a way for them to get to a real grocery store, buy fresh produce, vegetables, fruit, etc., and learn how to cook simple recipes. And part of our program for the rising freshmen before they go to high school is an 8-week sleepaway boot camp where they are with black, brown, yellow, whatever, and where they are with rich, poor, whatever. And it is how to be an American adult. And it's John F. Kennedy's asked not what your country can do for you, what you can do for it. And they must cook. They cook a meal every other day. So they come away with 8 really healthy breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. They personally prepped and cooked themselves. So 1,000 kids at a summer camp in one of these military mothballed camps that we've got in states all over the country, um, where they learn to get along and where they learn what it takes to be an adult.
It's somewhat reintroducing basic training for people that the national service, as you and I would have known it in our fathers' times, um, and that sense of get away from home and learn how to be independent. You know, I went to Hendon, so you'll know that the police college, and learn to iron a shirt, learn to get up yourself, and take care of yourself and do those kinds of things, and learn to listen to what the drill sergeant says.
Exactly. Get out in the morning and you have to exercise. I don't care if you're walking, but
Mhm.
you've got to exercise and then learn all these recipes and come back with the recipes for that. If it is a single parent mom, hey, mom, I can cook. I'm 13, 14 years old now. I can do this for you. I can cook healthy food and it tastes so much better. And I just did it for 8 weeks out in the woods, learning to get along with everybody. And they get paid. And so when you think about my dad's, 4,000 pounds that resulted in my deposit in the house and every place I've lived in the United States to be able to own multi-million-dollar homes, where that seed money came from. This program then is followed by work experiences sophomore, junior, senior year. We're recommending one in a business, one in a government agency, and at least one in volunteer or charity work. That you've got $20,000 of wages, knowing full well that the poorest families are going to have tremendous pressure on to use that money, but get banks to compete as much as 7.5% interest, no tax, no social security deductions in that money. And those kids that are able to save it, $25,000 in cash at age 18 to buy your own apartment or to invest in an entrepreneurial business. And I used to, when I was in Atlanta, do guest speaking at Georgia State University, where 80% of the people are first-time generation going to university and overwhelmingly minorities. And see the brilliant ideas they have, whether it's the music industry, entertainment industry, fashion design industry, but the industries where so many young minorities were interested in, and a lot of the digital, AI and some of the other industries. If they had that seed money to just take their idea and totally change the trajectory of their life, that they're not going to think, they've got 4 years of work experience, including the boot camp, to say, this is the major I really want to follow, or I don't want to follow it. I want to just go and get taught on CAD CAM and, AI design and become an IT or engineering person.
So this is all the plan of the Aspire Difference Foundation, which you've set up to drive some of this thinking. And say we've talked mostly about education here and the family, but you're intertwining that because we could then go on for another half an hour about healthcare or the polarization and crime and the police and things like that. So you address all of these complex scenarios. How do you foresee this happening? Because you're dealing with 100 families at the moment.
Yeah. Well, no, we're dealing with about 22. We just started the foundation last year. We're dealing with about 22 that we're actually financially supporting, on the four legs. So either mental health of the caregiver, a safe, secure place to live. Number three, quality of life, getting the kids into healthy exercise, healthy food. And then number four, getting into a preschool education where the test and the measure of how effective the Aspire Difference Foundation is did they go into kindergarten able to read and write,
Right.
do basic sentences and do basic math, basically be in a position to have a true head start and be able to succeed.
And I hear that from you, and you're tackling that in firstly Denver and then Atlanta. Here in Kalamazoo, we've got philanthropists that established what's called the Kalamazoo Promise, which is basically free college for anybody that graduates Kalamazoo High School, public schools. And one of the things they found very early on, because they were bleeding edge of doing that, is that kids were bumping out of that because they hadn't been prepared at the preschool level. And so they're now investing quite a lot in that 4-year-old, 3 and 4 kind of age group to prepare that. One of the challenges that you're talking about in this is we've got a bunch of philanthropists trying to address what we'd normally think government should be doing.
Very much so. David, I'm going to plug my I came back from the mountains and didn't plug my laptop in. I thought I had more juice. So I'm just going to plug it in. If you would excuse this, and you probably need to do a splice on it. I apologize for that, but here we go. It'll just take me a second here. Plug this in.
I don't want anything flashing in the corner of your screen. Let you know that needs to happen.
Okay. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to change position because of where the outlet is. So I apologize for that different background.
No worries. We will do some snipping.
To the excellent point you're making, stop here. So,
Hang on a minute and just give us let's just take a
Absolutely.
little bit of a pause and then you can come back in.
No worries.
Go ahead.
To the excellent, point that you're making, David, in the question. Yeah. Unfortunately, I do think that charitable organizations, philanthropists need to step in. What we've tried to do is that, of all the 10 social issues, the biggest ones are the income gap, lack of ability to pay bills, lack of ability to have one job where, that mom, if it is a mom or dad, can actually nurture the kids. So cook healthy meal, sit with the kid afterwards, read with them, and teach them the alphabet, teach them reading and math and everything else, and not have to go off to the second job. And particularly when you add in beyond the minimum wage, which is a burden not on the government, it's a burden on employees. And it's the conscious that, you know, right where you are in Kalamazoo, the young men and women that worked at Western Michigan University selling Broncos tickets for the Aspire Group, my company, for many years. We've done it for well over 10 years there. They were being paid $22,000 base pay. Post-COVID, they're getting high 20s. They're getting at least $15 an hour. And then they're on top of that, they're making $10,000, $12,000 in commission. And within 3 years, if they're good, they've qualified to become considered as a manager or a director, where their base is 60,000 and they've got a chance to make 80,000 with commissions and bonuses on that. So I know we can do it. It's painful. And a lot of business people will say phooey, but I know we can do it. And yes, even if the customer has to pay more for the hamburger, it's the right thing to do by my book, whether it's the right thing to do by everybody. So that's not government. That is business to raise the minimum wage. Then we get into free preschool. That's government. And like I said, it's $100 billion a year investment for all 4 million kids in America, many of whom there are 7 states already that are giving free preschool. That needs to be done. So for those 5 years, and if that's all we do, that's fantastic. The cost of the Latchkey Kid program of babysitting within school, so those kids don't go home or they're not in an empty house before the school bus arrives. They're dropped off at school early, or there's an early bus in some school districts takes them to school. There's retired teachers. There's the interim teachers that are there helping them. And then after school, they're doing their homework and they're not at home, with the risk of teenage pregnancy or drugs or gangs and all those other social problems. So that's massive. The boot camp it's a lot of money. Again, it's $100 billion if all 4 million kids, which is about what each cohort is. There's about 4 million kids born in America per year right now. So to have all 4 million of them in summer camp, again, it's $100 billion. It's a big investment that would be a government investment. But I would argue that you get it back in the increased productivity of those young men and women, of the reduction in crime, reduction in pregnancy, reduction in antisocial behavior, and the later productivity that you get out of those kids is massively increased. It's a mind that's not wasted. It's a mind that goes back to our earlier discussion, David, and that is, it's not about equality. It's about taking the gifts you've got and maximizing the gifts you've got. And then from that, enjoying liberty in this country, enjoying the freedom of this country, and being able to have the happiness in this country. Because, the other part of the book is we recommend free college tuition, like you said, you've got in Kalamazoo, but the kids would then be prepped. They would have qualified to go to a 4-year college if that's what they want and if that's in their best interest. So 4 years of vouchers, $15,000 a year. We eliminate student debt. And if you want to go be a plumber, beautician, esthetician, or an IT person, you don't need to go to university to get that degree, then you get your professional certification. So it's completely an investment in our youth that a couple of times the government steps in because sophomore, junior, and senior year, when you're in the work experience, it's the businesses that are paying for it. And again, I'm a business guy that built a company that we used to produce $120 million a year in incremental revenue for pro sports teams, the NFL. We did their All-Star game. We did US Open tennis. We did Open golf in St. Andrews, and we've done colleges like Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, who have been long-term clients of the company that I built. I know what the economics are, and you can do it, but all of a sudden now, we eliminate so many of the social problems, not all of them. We haven't cured the problem of social media. We haven't even talked about that, which is so
Well,
toxic. Yeah.
yeah, and the whole message that you're sharing is an inspirational message for us to recognize the things that we align on rather than allow the things that we disagree about to take over everything. Because, like you said, that I want to live in a place where I feel I can use my talents, I can be safe, I can, have a level of healthy food and exercise in my life. I can enjoy family, enjoy stuff, and maybe go to who's it, Pittsburgh game every so often. That if we all want that kind of thing. It's when we only talk about the extremes that we get divided. And you're really writing a message that says, hey, let's focus in on some common stuff. Even if people may say, yeah, but this is just going to increase the debt. What you're saying is, but it's going to save us later on. The savings
Yeah,
will come if we do this right.
it's the Fram oil filter commercial. Pay me now or pay me later. And if you pay me later, you'll pay me a hell of a lot more.
Mhm.
It's an investment. And, I'm a business guy. I'm an entrepreneur, invest in our kids, all of them, not entitlements, all of them. And the idea that, you know, um, I can get really angry at times, and I don't want to do that. But I think some of the political parties are deliberately providing opium for the poor to keep them down. And the analogy I give is living in Georgia. We got so much stick for the idea of having to require a driver's license to vote because leaders in the Black community would say Black people don't have driver's licenses. Well, hell, that's the most offensively racist thing you could possibly say. Of course they do. Of course they do. They need a driver's, not a driver's license. They need a government issued ID to get their medical benefits, to get all their entitlements, to go to a doctor. I mean, and it's so offensive to assume, particularly when you live in Atlanta, 65 to 70% of the Black population are fully working and doing, many of them are trying to achieve the American dream. So why do that? Why, the my father taught me hard work and I hated it. When I'd finished doing the hard work, I felt so much better. And he taught me the ability to learn what you get from that self-discipline, accountability, all of those things that is what we need to teach. And social media has become so toxic, and I hate censorship, but somehow, somewhere along the line, we've got to stop the nastiness of that stuff. And if we go back to the media that David, you're operating in now, and with your podcast world and with the businesses you're in, and we look at the fairness doctrine, and we got rid of the fairness doctrine on media that it had to be relatively fair and balanced. And when that went away, you get CNN, you get Fox News, you get all these other areas. And then in the internet and social media, you get these niche industries, particularly, in dreadful areas like pornography, and some of those other things. It's not healthy. And my middle daughter is the deputy district attorney here in Denver for the city and the county. And a month ago, before she moved up to that promotion, she ran the anti-human trafficking division. People don't realize how big human trafficking is. People don't realize how big a business it is. And that there are more people in the world in slavery today than there was at the height of slavery in the 1800s. Way more people. It's insipid. And she got a pimp put away for 448 years because he was a repeat offender, even been indicted but never convicted, and she got him put away on all these offenses, trafficking 7 young women. I mean, there's so many things there that there are, like you said, David, you said it so well. There are so many simple solutions we all agree on. Let's stop fighting about what we don't agree on. I have these conversations with people all the time. I'm a Catholic Christian, and what's the difference between Catholicism and most of the other Christian religions? Not many, you know. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a couple of biggies, but there's not many. And then what's the difference between most of these Christians and people who are Muslim or Jewish or non-Christian? You know, not that many. If you love people, and that's why one of our recommendations is having gone to Costa Rica a couple of times now. When you say muchas gracias, thank you to a native in Costa Rica, they say pura vida, pure life, which means have a great life and don't stress the little things, right? So, what's the national ethos that we need in America? Um, I just offer up a suggestion for people to think about. We're pals. PAL stands for peace and love. So, David, we're pals. I'm your pal. You're my pal. And it's a way to soften the toxicity, is to recognize we're all brothers and sisters. We all want the exact same thing. And my job in life is to make the world a better place, and make it so you can live the life you want. And and this book is designed in a small way to at least start the conversation, try and get the attention of politicians, people that can actually absorb this as part of their policy. And so I'm working on it with Governor Kemp, in Georgia, working on it with Governor Polis here in Colorado. Let's adopt some of the, not all, but let's start somewhere, and let's have free preschool for every kid in Colorado and Georgia. And then let's have that be successful and show it to the rest of America. So all the other states. So Governor Whitmer, brings it in to Michigan, and the Republican politicians in Michigan are behind it, not against it.
Well, Bernie, thanks for being my new pal. I really appreciate this conversation. And as you and I have discovered, we could probably have this chat for days, never mind the 40 minutes that we have. So I really appreciate the time. People can find out more at Reimagining America's Dream, Making It Attainable for All, or berniejmullin.com. Anywhere else we should point them?
Go buy the book at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or Kobo, and certainly please email me if I can help in any way, and support in any way. But David, thank you so much for the time. For a Leeds United fan, you're not bad. For those listeners, we obviously support rival teams that have had some good Donnybrooks and battles in the past. That's for sure.
Oh, Bernie, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it.
That was the Humanity Leadership Podcast. My name's David Wheatley. For further information about Humanity, go to humanity.com or check out our latest book, What Great Teams Do Great, from all good bookstores. Have a good one. Stay healthy.